Welcome to the Mindful Fire Podcast, a show about crafting a life you love and making work optional using the tools of mindfulness, envisioning, and financial independence. I'm your host, Adam Cuello, and I'm so glad you're here. Each episode of the Mindful Fire Podcast explores these three tools through teachings, guided meditations, and inspiring interviews with people actually living them to craft a life they love. At its core, Mindful Fire is about creating more awareness and choice in your life. Mindfulness helps you develop self-awareness to know yourself better and what's most important to you by practicing a kind, curious awareness. Envisioning is all about choosing to think big about your life and putting the power of your predicting brain to work to create the life you dream of. And financial independence brings awareness and choice to your financial life, empowering you to make your vision a reality by getting your money sorted out and ultimately making work optional. And here's the best part. You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to live out your vision. Mindful Fire is about using these tools to craft that life now on the path to financial independence and beyond. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Let's jump into today's episode. Rose, welcome to the Mindful Fire Podcast. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Thanks, Adam. I'm totally excited to be here and talking with you today.
Yeah, as we were saying before we started recording, I first came across you and your work through the Economy Conference. I unfortunately did not attend, but I did watch your talk that you gave about the concept of enough a couple years ago, and it really just spoke to me. Actually, right after I watched that talk, I messaged you on Instagram, I think, and I invited you to be on the podcast. And then today I watched that talk again. And once again, it was like, is she talking about me? So I'm so thrilled to have you here and to dive into this concept of enough today.
Thank you. I'm really excited too. And as we were saying before we started recording, it's a talk that I need to watch regularly for my own self as well, because I think some of those concepts of enough are just things that it's so easy to forget, and we need to remember and remind ourselves about it over and over again. That's the journey. That's the practice.
Absolutely. So I'd love to have you start by sharing a little bit with the audience about who you are, your journey, and what you're up to these days.
Yes. So I'm Rose, and I'm a minimalist. I'm a mom of triplets who are 13 years old. And my journey to minimalism and simplicity, which kind of ties in with that idea of enough, it started back in 2011 when the triplets were about 2 years old and I went back to work full time. So when they were born, I was able to take some time off from my career. I stayed home for a couple of years. And then I always say that was enough for me. I ran back to work to save my sanity because I needed something professional to be doing. Being home with infant triplets, as many of us can imagine, is not easy. So I went back to work full time, and that's when I started to have this sense of tension in my life between my professional life, my home life, and my stuff. So I felt like every day was this Groundhog's Day scenario where I would get to work at 7. I was a middle school teacher, so I had to be at work at 7. I would get to work at 7. I would get home around 4. And at that point, I'm clocking into the job of being the mom to the 3 2-year-olds. And so I'm doing the mom job. And then by the time you're done with that, you get them in bed. It's like 7, 8 o'clock or so. And I've got maybe an hour left in the day before I have to get myself to bed so I can get up the next day and rinse and repeat that cycle. And what I found during that 1 hour of free time, I'm so tired. I've been teaching middle school all day. I've been taking care of 3 2-year-olds. And now there's 1 hour. And all I was doing was dealing with the physical stuff in the house, like putting away the toys and the shoes and the sippy cups, moving the papers around. And it was really exhausting because my days went from serving my students to serving my family to serving my stuff. And the one person never getting served in that equation is myself. And so what started to happen was I just found myself lacking this time that I needed to refresh and refuel myself, which I know is really important in the things you talk about with mindfulness and centering yourself and having time where you focus on your inner well-being. That was never happening because I was just meeting the needs of other people all day and then meeting the needs of my physical things. And so it was really stressful. And it came to a head at Christmas time when we took the kids to visit the grandparents, and they received, as often happens when you have adorable little children, so much stuff. And the grandparents all live out of state. So we've driven up to see the out-of-state grandparents. We've got 3 adorable 2-year-olds. And it's just like, here's aisle 10 of Walmart for you. And I'm like, thanks. So we bring all that stuff home and I'm just so overwhelmed. I thought maybe I just need to buy a bigger house because I don't know what to do. I'm already spending the small margin of time of my day. That's the time that I'm dealing with all of it. And I thought, well, if I bought a bigger house, maybe that wouldn't be a problem, which is not really logical thinking because people buy a bigger house, they just buy more stuff. Like that's what we do. But I was to that point because I was so overwhelmed, and I had lunch with a friend and I was complaining to her about this. And she said, why don't you just become a minimalist? And I'd never really thought about the fact that I didn't need to own all the stuff. I thought if people gave me the stuff that I had to do something with it, or if I bought the stuff, I had to organize it and keep it in bins and label everything. And so I started reading a blog by Leo Babauta called Zen Habits, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. It's a wonderful blog. And he was one of the early minimalist bloggers. And so I started reading his blog. I started reading Francine Jay's The Joy of Less. And it was this huge light bulb for me that all I needed to do was let go of the stuff that I didn't need or use. And it seems so simple, but it had never occurred to me before. And so I started that January of 2012, I started just letting go of the excess things. And I would say it took me about 8 months to go through pretty much every space in the house and just let go of the stuff we didn't need. And I probably let go of about 70% of the things we owned, which is a really significant number. But I always say that, yeah, the number is really significant. But what I found underneath all the stuff was even more significant, because what I found once I released all these excess things was this greater amount of free time. So I still had a really busy day. I mean, I'm still teaching middle school. I still have 3 2-year-olds. That has not changed. But at the end of the day, when I would normally spend time frantically picking up things, I could now sit on the couch. I could relax. I could drink some tea and read a book, talk to my sister on the phone. I had a sense of my own life back because I let go of dealing with and serving my stuff all the time. So I had more free time, and that resulted in a greater sense of peace of mind and a lot more clarity in my life as well. As a result of this, I blogged about that as well because I love writing. I was an English teacher, so I'd started a blog about, I'm decluttering my towels today, and now I'm decluttering my wardrobe, and now I'm decluttering the kitchen. And I'd post before and after pictures on the blog for like the 40 readers, that are reading this, which include like my mom and her friends. It's a really hot audience there. But I'm blogging about it because I enjoyed it. Then eventually what happened is, because I had this clarity, about a year or 2 later, I decided I was going to leave teaching and I was going to start a business helping other people do the same thing. So it became a business. Then I wrote a book. I did a TEDx. I did the economy talk. And what sort of happened as my journey's gone along, like it started very much with physical stuff, dealing with the towels and the teacups and all that. But it morphed into what I found is when you let go of the physical stuff, it's great. Your house looks cleaner. That's fine. But then what starts to happen is you start to notice like the internal clutter that you also can carry. And I started on this journey toward more what I call simplicity as opposed to minimalism, because I think minimalism is really focused on the physical things, which is great. But simplicity was more about, how do I do the same thing, this letting go with the things inside of me? And that's where I started writing things like that speech you talked about, The Journey to Enough, where I realized that, yes, decluttering my stuff has given me a greater sense of peace of mind, but decluttering your stuff alone won't do that. If you actually want to have a peace of mind there, you have to deal with some of those inner gremlins that we're all dealing with. And that is its own type of letting go. And the difference between that and decluttering a closet is when you bag up all the excess stuff in the closet and you take it to the Goodwill or you put some of it in the trash or the recycling, it's pretty much gone. Like, yeah, some of it can come back in if you start doing some online shopping or someone gives you stuff, but it's pretty much gone. But the internal simplicity or the internal letting go is a continual practice, and you do make progress, but it's a much slipperier endeavor because you're dealing with your emotions and your feelings. And any given day, any given situation, you think you've made all this progress to being this Zen person, and then something happens with your spouse and you're like, oh, I guess I'm not as Zen as I thought I was. And it's this continual practice of returning to these principles of letting go. So I guess that's the journey. So it started with my towels and my stuff. And the journey that I'm on now is dealing with the internal things. And I'm making progress. And I'm also learning to accept that now I'm always going to be on this journey. This is what it is. The practice is the journey. And I don't think we ever really become masters of it. We just become practitioners of it.
Yeah, that is a great call out, right? Like we like to think that we're going to get there and then be done. But with things like this, certainly I would put mindfulness in that bucket as well. It's a constant lifelong practice, self-awareness, right? Self-compassion. All these things are lifelong practices. And I think one of the things that came up for me as you were talking is it's not just the emotions that come up, but it's also just like the lifetime of practice and conditioning that we have practiced throughout our life of this one way of being. And to shift into a new way of being is going to take a lot of time and a lot of practice and a lot of self-kindness and a lot of remembering to come back and to start again when you get off track. And I was like laughing. I was on mute, but I was laughing as you were talking about, I guess I'm not as there as I thought I was. That's like me as a parent. I'm like, I'm supposed to be the mindful guy. Hey, like I talk about mindfulness, I teach mindfulness, and then my son ignores me 47 times in a row, and I'm not so mindful.
Yeah.
And that's life. It's just we're constantly on the journey. We're constantly learning, growing, coming back to what we have learned and we need to remember. It's just a long process.
Yeah. And I think that there is such a tendency to want to beat yourself up when you find yourself back. And I don't even know if we could consider it back. That's probably even the wrong word to use. But when you've done some mindfulness, you've done some meditation, you've worked on yourself, you've done some journaling, some gratitude practice, positivity, all these things. And then the thing happens, like the toddler doesn't listen to you or your spouse says the thing. And suddenly you're like, wham, back in the same pattern that you've been in for decades of your life that you've been trying to change. And I think for me, the thing that I struggle with is in that moment, being kind to myself and recognizing that's not actually a failure. Because I think a lot of times my tendency is to think like, there's probably a reason I have never gone out there and called myself like a mindfulness teacher, even though I think some of the things I do with clients and so forth is mindfulness, is because there is this fear I have of looking at myself like a hypocrite because like I lose my shit sometimes. Like I do, like we all do.
Me
and
too.
It can be really hard to say, I'm this, that speech you talked about, the journey to enough. This is why I said I need to be watching that every week to remind myself that I'm enough because it's a beautiful speech. Like I cried when I wrote that speech. I cried almost every time I practiced that speech because it was so true in me. Everything. And I was like, I need to get this out. This is so true. And it's so important. And so many people have told me this changed my life, where I looked at myself in the mirror and I told myself I'm enough and I was weeping. And I'm like, yes. But do I practice that every day? Do I feel like I'm enough every minute of the day? Every day? No, I don't. But it doesn't mean that I'm a failure. And it doesn't mean that I'm a hypocrite. It just means I'm practicing. I'm learning like everybody else on this journey. My favorite metaphor of mindfulness is it's like training a puppy. Like you train the puppy and then the puppy, they do something else and then you gently tug them back. And I think that has been helpful to me to be like, my mind is the puppy and I'm training the puppy all the time. Yeah. And you train a puppy gently. And I think that's the thing that's hard to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the reason that getting back to the old way isn't a failure is because you have awareness, right? Yeah. Like that's the difference. Before, it was completely unaware. Right? That feeling of not being good enough or acquiring things you don't need or whatever it might be for you, it was happening and you were just oblivious to it. Right? And I'll speak for myself. I was oblivious to it before I started meditating for 26 years of my life. I was completely unaware of the inner critic and the conversation going on inside my head. And that still comes up. I still get carried away. I still feel like I got to keep striving and achieving and nothing is ever enough. But now I'm aware of it and the awareness changes it a little bit and it gives us a choice on how we want to move forward. And so I think that's the difference, at least in my mind.
Yeah. It's recognizing it. There's the difference between being in a pattern. So I think it was really easy to see this with the decluttering, because the decluttering, while it is a physical act, there actually is a lot of mental stuff that goes along with that. So I think I probably first became aware of this through that decluttering or letting go, minimizing practice, because all of that stuff came into my life from a lack of awareness or a lack of consciousness. It was, oh, I'm walking into Target, so I might as well walk through the dollar section. Or, oh, let me just peruse what's on sale. Oh, these things are buy one, get one. Let me just pick up a few things. And one of the first things that I noticed was I was setting out into this journey with no real guidance or coaching or anything. I was just starting to let go of the stuff. But what happened was I started to notice those thought patterns that previously had just seemed like the truth or seemed like normal. This is how you walk into Target. You walk in and you go through that aisle of random crap first. It just seemed like the way. Something's on sale, you buy it because it might not be on sale next week. And I started to notice the changes in my thought patterns and my habits in my mind. And that really started with that decluttering physical process. And that's something that when I work with people, they'll say to me, you never told me to stop shopping, but I've stopped shopping. I'm like, yeah, it just naturally happens. Like you start to realize that there were patterns in your mind that were leading you to overconsume. And once you start dealing with your stuff, what you become aware of is those patterns and that you're no longer just responding to the trigger anymore. Like you're creating that space between the, oh, something's on sale. And there's a little space there that you're like, should I really buy it? Do I need this? Will it help me? That mindfulness, I think I fell into it, not realizing that I was actually cultivating mindfulness around my consumption. When I started decluttering, I'm just making this connection now talking to you. That's probably why the next natural step was, okay, you've decluttered most of the physical stuff, but that mindfulness awareness continued to happen and continues to happen around other things, patterns in relationships and patterns in business and patterns, like you mentioned, in achievement and striving. Those are things that I've definitely started to notice and I question a lot more than I used to. And it's very freeing, but it's also really easy to get caught up in them again. And hopefully most of the time I notice them, but not every single time.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I've found really helpful when I do catch myself caught up in a story or a thought or a negative self-talk is first bringing awareness to it and then asking the question, is this useful? Is this taking me where I want to go? Is this how I want to be showing up? Is this helpful or is this useful for me to show up in this way? And if not, you can just let it go.
You know what's so funny about that? The questions that I ask people to ask themselves about their stuff, is it useful or is it beautiful? And so it's the same question, right?
It's funny.
You can ask yourself, is it useful? You have 5 can openers in the utensil drawer. Like, is it useful to have 5 can openers? Unless you're an octopus opening a lot of cans.
I'm not opening that many cans.
That's really interesting, that same question, which is why I think there are so many parallels between the two types of letting go, like the physical letting go, the mental letting go, because that question, is it useful? And my second question, is it beautiful? Like, do you consider it beautiful? I think that's probably another type of version of that question for our thoughts. Is it useful? Is it a beautiful thought? Like, does it add beauty to the world to think this or believe this? Does it add goodness? Is it true? That's another one that I've asked myself when I notice patterns. Is it true? Because often it's the story that I'm telling myself and it's usually not useful. Is it useful? No. No is the clear answer for me.
Yeah.
Most of the time when I catch myself. Yeah. And then for me, I also will ask, is it true? And that really forces me to face, like, it's really an interpretation that I'm experiencing. And an interpretation is just an interpretation. It's not necessarily true. It's something you can choose to believe is true, but that doesn't mean that it is universally, unequivocally true. Yeah, we should make a handout of these questions for people.
Yeah.
I like a good handout.
Yeah. And even if it is true, is it useful?
Yeah.
Like that, it maybe not, probably not. It will become very clear when you ask that question. So yeah, there's this woman, Byron Katie. Have you ever heard of her? Yeah, she calls it the work. And basically there are 4 questions and I don't remember all of them. I'll link to them in the show notes, but I think two of them are, is it true? Is it really true? Like, is it actually true? Like unequivocally true. And it just points to the fact that like we make things up constantly and we interpret things in a way that you and I will look at the same situation and interpret it completely differently. And so we really need to check with ourselves. And is it true? And is it useful? I like that.
When I was a teacher, I had these posters that I'd made in my classroom, and I don't know where I got these questions from, some type of self-help book. And I thought, I need to put these in my classroom. And I put up there, so before you say anything in here, ask yourself, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And so we talked about it, especially at the beginning of the year. We might say something, maybe it is true, but is it kind? Okay. And even if it's true and it's kind, is it necessary to say? So those, not that my students always followed this, and probably I didn't follow that all the time, but those were some really good guiding questions, which I think could be applied to our own minds, right? Is this true? Is it kind? Is it kind for me to think this about myself or about someone else? And is it necessary for me or them in some way to think this? So I need to revisit some of my old wisdom here.
A lot of
Look
good
at this
stuff.
old wisdom that I have that I've been forgetting.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So we've been talking a little bit about this in different ways, but this concept of enough, I'd love to dive into that some more. And I know there are a few areas of life that we constantly feel like we're not enough. So maybe you can give a little overview about how you think about enough, and yeah, we can go from there.
Yeah, I think I'll tell you all a story. This
Love
is
a
a
good
story.
story.
Yeah, that I start my speech with, the economy speech that you talked about. And the story was, I was on vacation. We were in Tennessee in the Smoky Mountains. I was with my husband's parents, me and my husband, our kids, my brother-in-law, his daughter. So family vacation, we've got a cabin. And I was in the middle of a launch for a course that I was teaching. It was a decluttering course. So I'm doing this launch. And I hadn't really thought about the fact that you're in this launch and you're going to be in the mountains in Tennessee where you're not going to have Wi-Fi. So I'm really stressed because I'm trying to do Facebook Live interviews with former students. I have to go to the library in the town where they have decent Wi-Fi. And so I'm trying to manage all these things. And I can see that the numbers of the course, people are not signing up in the way that I want them to. And I'm feeling really devastated by this. I'm like, I'm a failure. So these are the thought patterns. I'm a failure. People aren't signing up. What am I doing wrong? I should have stayed in teaching. Why did I leave my teaching job to become an entrepreneur and have to try to convince people to take a class from me? My students used to just show up because they were required by law to be there. Now I try to make them come and pay for it. And I'm just like, you are an idiot. Why are you doing this to yourself? And so one of the things that's always helped me, because I'm a writer, I love to write, is I know that writing is a way that helps me see what's really true. It's a way that I figure out what I really think or feel. So I start journaling about this. And as I'm journaling all these feelings, like I'm a failure, no one's signing up, I suddenly realize that I have felt this way my whole life in different situations, like different fields play in the same game. It was like this moment of illumination where for the first time I saw this pattern that started when I was a little girl, where I thought, once I get all A's, then I'll be enough. I got all A's. And then I still didn't feel like enough. So then I'd be like, then once I get all A's in college, then I'll be enough. Well, I got all A's in college and that didn't feel like enough. Then once I get my first professional job, then I'll have done it. Then I'll have achieved it. You get that little burst of like, yes, I got the professional job. Okay, then you still feel like you're not a good enough teacher. And then I was like, once I start my own business and I start making some money on my own, then I'll feel like I'm enough. And well, I did that. And then here I was again, still feeling like it wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. And so for the first time, I started plotting it out. I actually wrote out a little timeline in my journal. And I realized that enough was this point on the timeline that was always in the future. And it didn't matter wherever I was at that current time, whether I was 8 years old or 18 or 38, which is the age I was in that moment in that story. The enough point on the timeline was always ahead of me. And I was always getting closer to it. And just when I would almost get to it, it would hop ahead a little more. And then I'd go and it would hop ahead another time because it'd be like, once you write the book, once you do the TEDx talk, once you make this amount of money, once you have this many students in the course. So it was this constantly moving and changing target. And I woke up to the folly of this and how detrimental it was in my life. And so I didn't really know what to do with that, but it was illuminating. Suddenly I could see something that I hadn't seen before. I finished the launch. I got a few more students. I did the class. All was well. And I kept that journal under my bed. And then I pondered this idea back and forth. But I really didn't do anything more about it for probably a year or two. It just stayed in my journal. And then when Diana Merriam contacted me about doing a speech for Economy, I was like, I really want to talk about something more than the decluttering, because that's all I'd ever really talked about before. But I didn't know what it was. And I just happened to be flipping through that journal. And I was like, this is what I want to talk about. And in writing the speech, I even explored it further in how we seek enough in all these different planes of our life. It can be through enough success, trying to find enough relationships, having enough money, getting enough acknowledgement. It's all these different planes, but we're always seeking the same thing, which is feeling like we are enough. And what I got to in the speech was we are never going to be satisfied when we seek enough externally. You could get 5 million Instagram followers, be making billions of dollars, and have like the biggest company in the world, and you can feel like a failure because it's an internal journey. It's really the way you get to enough is you just say, I am enough. I'm enough as I am. It's no longer a question mark. It's a given and it's inherent. And the thing is, we were born with it. You said you have a 4-year-old. I'm guessing your 4-year-old thinks that he's enough because we believe it when we're kids. And then somewhere along the line, it's like we forget this. And then I think the human journey, the rest of our lives, is remembering and returning to it, just as we talked about at the beginning. So that's my story of the journey to enough. And I'm still on that journey. And as I shared at the end of the talk, this is a journey we take over and over and over again, because I'll get to enough and then something will happen and I'll feel not enough again. And then I'll get to enough. And it's really, I realize this is an internal journey that I take, and the external circumstances have nothing to do with it. The number of students that sign up for my class, the amount of money I make, the number of people who hire me for whatever, it has nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing. And for most of my life, I believed that those were the things that would make me feel that way. Like if I got those external markers, then I would feel enough. And it is not true. It is the wolf in sheep's clothing. We only get to enough by believing we're enough. And we're going to have to believe it over and over again.
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps here. When I watched your talk an hour ago, I had goosebumps because you're describing like a fundamental human experience that I think everyone feels. And I can't speak for everyone everywhere in the world, but I think in America, absolutely. We're just such an achievement and consumerist type environment in society that like it's all about going more and more, better. So for me, just speaking personally, all of those aspects, like especially the achievement and the success and the money, there's never enough. And like you said, it's even when you get there, it's just the goalpost just keeps moving. You get the promotion. Okay, I'm happy for maybe a day, probably not even a day. And then it's like, okay, what's next? It happens again and again and again. And we often don't even like pause to like take in or look back at all the amazing things that we've done and created and impact that we've had. We're just, what's next? What's next? And I often use this language in the talk, but what I call this is the if only mindset. If only I could be retired early. If only I could teach mindfulness and get paid for it. If only I could be an entrepreneur. It's always out there, but like you said, it's not out there. It's in here. Like finding enough is inside and is a constant practice. Yeah, so I'll pause there, but I have 1,000 more questions.
But I think it's interesting that you bring up kind of the FI journey, because I think FI in and of itself is designed for people who want to seek. It's an achievement. There's a goal. There's a FI number that you can actually get to. And the really interesting thing in the FI community, if you have gone to conferences or you've talked to people, is one of the things that can really happen is people get to the goal. They do all the saving, they do all the investing they're going to use the 4% rule, and they get to the goal. And then they're miserable. They're not happy. This thing that they've been working toward the whole time that they thought was going to be the thing, they find is not the thing. And so there's actually quite a bit of every conference I've been to, they have always a breakout session for people who actually are at FI to talk about how to deal with the emotional struggles that you're going to face when you actually achieve that goal, because we think like, oh, we're going to get there and suddenly the gates are going to open up and the heavens are going to shine down and then we'll be happy. But the thing is that that's not how any goal works. Nothing is going to give you that. You're either going to choose that wherever you are now or you're not. That's it. You either choose to see the good and you choose to find your happiness and you choose to see the beauty, or you don't. And that doesn't matter if you're at FI or you're in credit card debt. You can choose it either way, which is the kind of the paradox, right? Because it's not that we shouldn't work toward goals. And I think that's the thing that I then struggle with, because I'm an achievement-oriented person. Sounds like you are as well.
Maybe
so
a
does
little
this, when I first came upon this realization, I'm like, so does this mean I should just like watch Netflix in my pajamas all day? Why am I out there working toward anything? And so then I think the challenge is to recognize that, yes, we work toward our goals and to add goodness to the world and to do what we are meant to do here. And along the way of that, we can have everything we want. While we're working toward the goal, we can have everything we really want. We can have peace. We can have joy. We can have connection. We can have love and beauty now and work toward the thing that we're working toward. And you mentioned like our culture. And the thing is like that is so opposed to the messages that we get in American culture, Western culture, which is get to this thing and then you're a success. Then you've achieved what you needed to achieve. And the thing is, it was available the whole time. Your 4-year-old has it probably right now in spades.
Yeah. When you say that, I feel a pit in my stomach, actually.
Why?
It's because I'm putting my not enough on him. Like I can see it. And it's like, I feel emotional about it right now, just like hearing that and feeling it, because it's like, I don't want to be doing it, but I need to unlearn it, right? I need to unlearn it. And I'm constantly telling him, don't do this, don't do that, be quiet, this and that. And I'm just like transporting myself back to like, I heard these things constantly my whole life too. And so it's like, it's not so much like you're not enough, but I feel not enough constantly. And we've talked before we started recording that I had a conversation with someone on another podcast yesterday called the Mindful Money Podcast. And at the end, we had a great conversation and I was talking about these things that I'm doing. And I want to speak to that regarding the FI thing, kind of the goal of FI. But putting all that aside, I was talking about all these things I'm trying to do and I want to do. And he's like, don't forget that you're fine just as you are. You have enough. You are enough. You know, your life is meaningful just as it is. And it's so easy to forget that. And why your talk resonated with me so much is because I constantly feel not enough. And for a very long time, I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
And now I realize it. But it's like you were saying, I have had a lot of progress, but I still feel it. And then when I think about how I interact with my son and how I model my behavior for him, I'm just passing it down. And I really don't want to do that.
As a parent as well, I think I've had to come to realize like there is meaning in this journey of claiming our enoughness past childhood. This is the human journey. We're not the first people to talk about this. The great philosopher, the Buddha, Jesus, like they were talking about this. So this, yeah, we can talk about achievement-oriented Western society, but they didn't invent insecurity. Okay, right. Like this has been here. And so do we pass it on to our children? Of course we do. While we love them and care for them and protect them, like even if we did our best not to, it would still happen because I think this is the life journey. Like we are meant to struggle with who we are and why we're here and what our purpose is. And if we're enough, like we can't stay children. And I remember, because your kids are not to this age yet, but I remember watching it happen when my triplets were like 5 or 6. And it was heartbreaking when they started to say things like, I'm just not good at football, or art isn't my thing, or I'm not good at math. And I started to see the doubts. I started to see the not enoughness, and I panicked. And I thought, what am I doing? I need to do more positive mantras. We need to do more like building them up. And the thing is, I think I've never met a person who has not had to struggle with this. This is what we are called to do. It is the journey of life. We can't avoid the pain. I think that's what it is. We can't avoid the pain because the greatest pain is thinking one of the greatest pains is thinking we're not enough. We're not good enough. And as painful as it is as parents to see our kids go through that, they have to go through it. I have 3 teenagers right now. Talk about not enough. Middle school started. It was painful to see my boys cry about how insecure they felt, how hard it was to go to school. It breaks your heart, but it's required. It's required that we go through that to claim our enoughness. I do think it is. There's no avoiding it. Oh, and I wish that there was a way. But if there is, I don't know it.
Yeah. Yeah. It brings me back to middle school. Wow. What a hotbed of not enough that was for me.
Oh, it's hard. And it's hard to watch your kids.
Oh,
yeah,
I
it's
can
hard to
only
watch
imagine.
your kids go through it.
Yeah. As you were talking about, and you talked about this in the talk, when your kids started having that language of not enough, my son already is doing that with, oh, I'm not good at that. Or I don't know how to do that. Like, I'm like, put on your shirt. He's like, I don't know how to do that. You have to help me. I'm like, you know how to do it. Let's be honest, dude. But my inkling in my mind was, what's the answer? What did you do to combat that? But then you kept talking and you're like, that's just part of life. And as you were talking also, I realized I'm just doing it again. I'm not a good enough parent. I'm literally doing it as we're talking.
Oh, God. It's the whole point of this podcast is to make you feel insecure about your parenting. We have succeeded.
I didn't need any help.
I don't either.
Yeah, but it's so insidious that like I'm asking you a question, I'm talking about my experience, and I'm doing it again. I'm not enougghing again. So yeah.
That's why it's such a circular journey. And we return to it. And just like what you modeled right now was awareness of it, which is huge because most of us, and I would say 80% at least of the time when I go into not enough, I'm not aware of it. So like if 10 to 20% of the time I could catch myself, what a victory that would be.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I have a real tendency to turn these interviews into therapy sessions for myself.
I'll send you my bill later.
It's too funny. I literally do this again and again. I love this. I love these conversations. I think people appreciate how real we're being, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the FI situation.
Okay.
This is a podcast about crafting a life you love and making work optional using mindfulness, envisioning, and financial independence. And I love envisioning, and I have created incredible results in my life and successes in my life by having a clear vision of what I want and going after it. And I always talk about using the power of my predicting brain to make it happen. And it's a fine line though, between the if only and the vision, right? Because it's like, yes, it's good to have a vision. It's what you're talking about with goals. Like it's good to pursue goals, but doing it from a kind, curious, mindful place and like a more of a relaxed pace rather than like this needs to work. And I mentioned I'm working on a few things right now. I'm in a mastermind group about getting clear on who it is I'm helping, what I'm helping them with, and then going out and doing podcast interviews to grow the business. And the interesting thing is when I think about my vision for why I'm pursuing FI, sometimes called the why of FI, it's so that I can pursue entrepreneurship, but in a way that is from a place of enough and sufficiency rather than scarcity, which is my default, unfortunately.
For most of us.
And so that's like being able to build businesses and help people and make impact without the forcing and the needing it to work to put food on the table for my family. But ironically, this week, I've realized that while I'm doing this, I'm finding myself forcing and like rushing. It's like the program just started and this is like the biggest investment I've ever made in myself. which is a whole nother conversation. But I'm finding myself just like, gotta get there. Let's go. Like, and it's stressing me out. I literally don't need the money. I'm envisioning, and yet I'm still striving. And I'm still trying to force it. And it's weird. I don't know why I'm telling you this or what
no,
I'm talking about here.
I think it's because that pattern of behavior is a pattern of behavior that we're going to continue acting out. That's why trying to get to enough doesn't really work, because like you said, you are where you envisioned yourself to be. At least from what I'm understanding, you are where you envisioned yourself to be, and yet you're striving. It's a total kind of different example, but I notice this in myself too. So I'm a rusher, or I used to really be a rusher, rush. And so I'll find myself like taking a shower like it's the Olympics, like someone is timing this. How fast can she go? And I'm just like, why? I don't need to rush through this shower. Like there's no reason for me to do it. But I think it's because for so much of my life, my default has been do the next thing, get there, keep going, fit in as much as you can during the day, because that's the marker of a good day. How much did you get done? So if you shower in like less than 5 minutes, then you can do more stuff. And so I think it's the pattern of behavior that shows up, because you said at 26, you started meditating. So you've got like 26 years of being in that pattern.
Unaware.
And now I'm guessing two years of doing that the other way.
Yeah. Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have necessarily like a great insight on that one, but just a commiseration of sorts that I noticed that in myself, that the default pattern of striving or rushing is always going to show up. And I think that's when we have the opportunity to be like, why? Why am I doing this? Is it useful? Is it actually
our conversation before?
Is it actually useful in what you're trying to achieve with this mastermind program?
Yeah. And the reason I mentioned the FI thing before, and what you were talking about of people getting to FI, getting that thing they've been striving for, that they've been saving for, and then being miserable. And I think it's because, one, they think that it's going to fulfill them when they could have been living that life all along. And when I think about my work in this space and what I'm looking to put together for the people I'm looking to help, it's really, I'm looking to help the people who are almost there. They're almost to FI, or they're at FI and they have that problem. I'm looking to help them craft that life that they want. Envision what is their post-FI life, but more importantly, first, envision that post-FI life, get really clear on what it is, why it's important, how they want to feel, and then pulling that post-FI life into their life right now and starting to live that post-FI life right now, because chances are they can do that, right? It's really not even a question of like how much money they've saved. It really doesn't matter. It's like you said before, they can start living that now. They can be enough and have enough right now. And so that's what I'm looking at bringing into the world in what's probably going to be some sort of group coaching program or something like that. Still getting clear on what that is. But yeah, I say that, one, because I'd love your thoughts on that as someone who has talked to a lot of people and has a business doing some sort of coaching and like things like that. But also just to say that like, I need to take my own medicine because I'm in this program. I can either strive and need to make this worth it and get enough out of it and make the most of it and all that stuff. And I can also enjoy it. What a concept. What a concept.
What a concept. It's like such big awareness, right? Around this idea of getting to the goal. And as you were talking, I was thinking about something a coach said to me once, because I was very much stuck in this, I got to get there. And once I get there, then I can relax. Then I can have fun. Then I can take walks in the middle of the day. Then I can do the things I want, but I have to get there first and work really hard to get there. Then I can do the fun stuff. And I don't remember how he worded this, but he said, what you're training yourself to do is to work hard and stress and strive. If you train yourself to live that way, when you get to the point you're trying to get to, you'll just continue to work hard and stress and strive. He's like, you are not training yourself to have fun. You are not training yourself to relax. You are training yourself in a way of being that will continue to be your way of being post reaching that goal. And that has stuck with me. What we want, you and me, what we want is available now. Joy, the things people want, we all want the same stuff. Everybody
Very simple.
want joy. We want love. We want a sense of freedom. That's what people want. And that is available to most people listening to this podcast for sure, most of them. That's available to us now because that's an internal quality. It's interesting because we kind of talked at the beginning about some things that were like going on in my life that I'm excited about. So I see myself, our family is planning this big road trip this summer. We're going all the way across the country from Dayton, Ohio, over to Canada, British Columbia. We're going to live on Vancouver Island for a month. My husband's going to work remote from his corporate job, which is like a big experiment. I'm going to work remote, but I always work remote, so it's not a huge experiment. And then for me, we're going to drive back. And it's the whole summer, and we're really excited, and we're getting the packing list and everything together. And I see this as what we're talking about. We could wait to do big trips and things like that until the kids are out of college and we're in our 50s and 60s, or we could try to experience some of what we really want, which is more of this freedom of location, freedom to do what we want, exploration or adventure. Like adventure is the word that keeps coming back to me. I want a life that feels adventurous. I live in the suburbs of Dayton, Ohio. Adventure is not the thing people think of when they think of that. Okay. It's wild here in the suburbs of Dayton. Let me tell you
Same
what's
in New
going
Jersey.
on.
Same in New Jersey. We got a Whole Foods over there. It's wild.
Crazy at that salad bar. But it's like I want adventure in my life. And the thing is, I can bring adventure into my life and I don't even have to go on a big road trip to do it. Like I could bring adventure into my life today by going to the local metro park and seeing what there is to see. Like I could take my dog. So I think what you're getting at is this idea, which is like, while we are working toward the goal, because what you're attempting to do is an amazing thing that's going to really help people. While we're working toward whatever goal we have, we can experience what we want every single step of the way. And
we can embody it. We can embody that feeling that we envision. Yeah, we can embody it right now.
Yeah.
Can pursue it. And I can remind myself that why I'm doing it, to help people, to have an impact, to try building a business, to try making some money, right? Like doesn't have to not be a money making thing, because I do enjoy making money. That's how I got here where I am. So it can be all those things, but it can also be easy and relaxed and fun and enjoyable, right? Like it doesn't have to be a struggle, and it doesn't have to be forced, and it doesn't have to be fast.
You know, what's interesting? So I'll tell another little story here. I told the story about being in the mountains and I'm struggling to get people in this course. And eventually people do get in the course and I do the course. It's fine. That course, I usually launch it 3 times a year, and it's always the hardest thing I do in my business. Live launching a course is always the hardest thing. And I've been doing it since 2017 when I first started the class. And every single time it's hard, every single time I think it's going to fail. And then at the end, like it happens. This year, 2023, I had a personal loss at the end of last year. My dad passed away very unexpectedly. And so when I looked at launching the winter course, I just thought, I cannot do this. So I just let it go. I said, we're not going to do it this winter. I'll do it in the spring. And then people be really excited because it wouldn't have been offered in the winter. Then I went to launch it this spring. I do all the things. I hired a marketing coach. I ran Facebook ads. My sales pages looked fantastic. And I had 2 people sign up. That's the lowest I've ever had the whole time I've ever taught this course since 2017. I'm like, what the heck? What is going on? And I had to call it. I said, it is not worth my time to teach this class for 2 people. So I called it. And so then I have 2 failed launches in a row, right? 2 things that are normally like a big cash injection for my business failed in a row. But what was interesting, and I see this because I told you the story of me being in the mountains where I'm crying and I'm like, I'm a failure. It was sad that it didn't work, but more than anything, I felt relieved that it didn't go forward. And I realized like what I felt inside was this was a failure. Like this course, I tried to launch a course and it didn't go. That is a failure. But I am not a failure. Like there was this difference between how I saw myself and how I saw the actual endeavor. which was a true failure. It really was. But I was not. And I was like, wow, I've really made progress, because back in the mountains in Tennessee, I felt like a failure when I had even more people signed up and more people. It was crazy years later. And so I canceled the second class and I was like, okay, what am I doing here? Like, what is going on? And then the funniest thing is these speaking engagements started just showing up for me. Like big companies, like big organizations start asking me to speak. I have 4 keynotes in May that I did not prospect for. I didn't do outreach. It just was like, whoa. And so when you said it can be easy, that's what I'm experiencing. It's this weird, I feel like I'm in a weird twilight zone where I was striving so hard trying to make that course work, doing all the things, like working hard, building the pages and all that. And it failed. And then these things that I'm not trying to pursue are just coming into me. And I'm like, it's really true that it can be easy. And this isn't to say that I will never do outreach again, that I will never launch things again. Like I will. But this, I feel like we talked about the universe a little bit at the beginning. I feel like the universe is teaching me a lesson. And by the way, April is going to be my biggest month ever. After 2 failed launches, I'm like, what the hey? It's like the universe is saying, Rose, guess what? You don't have to strive because it's going to be easy and you're going to be taken care of. And I've never had this lesson like taught to me so clearly. Like I believed that, or everything's going to be okay. I'm going to be taken care of. My business will be fine. But I feel like I'm really seeing it in black and white. Like you really don't need to strive. Things don't need to be hard. But relax into things. Like actually what you need will show up. It's there. This level of trust and faith that I think we achievers struggle with, because we're so used to achieving things based on our actions and our checklists. At least I am. That's how I've done all the things. And so this trusting that the things are going to happen and without me necessarily needing to strive is very weird. I'm still not 100% comfortable with it, but I'm experiencing it and I can't deny my experience in this moment.
Yeah, that's wonderful. First, congratulations. That's amazing. And it's, as you're speaking, I'm like having these realizations that like I've had before. It's even recently. And I just forget, like what you're describing is like kind of letting go and letting things happen and relaxing into the flow of experience. I don't know why I call it that, but
that's beautiful.
I have known this. I know this. I believe this. And yet I forget.
Yeah.
Like an example comes to mind from school. Like, so I was also straight A student, constantly striving. Look, I realize I love the teacher feedback. Like, oh, good job, Adam. I'm like, that's enough for this 1 second. But I remember when I took the SATs, the first time I studied really hard. I really did all the practice. And then I went and the score was like, it's not what it needs to be. Okay. And I just like signed up for 2 more times. And then the next time I still tried hard, but I got the score that I wanted. And then I was just like, all right, I'm good. I'm just going to relax, whatever. I'll take another one. I'm not going to study at all. And my score went up even more.
Whoa.
And it's just like over and over again, like the more I relax, and it's not that the more I don't care, but like, honestly, the more I just chill and let things happen and go with the flow, whether it be at work or my entrepreneurial hustles or side hustles, the more I just chill, the better things go. My promotions at work, like it's the same thing. And so I just need to remember this. This is a great reminder to remember this as I pursue this new business venture and putting things out there. And it doesn't need to be perfect. I can just enjoy, try. And if it fails, I'm not a failure. It is. And it's fine. And I've been having a lot of like universe reminders this week as well. Like I had like this B2B idea of like an envisioning workshop to kick off like a planning meeting or an offsite. But I had a situation where I was standing in the cafeteria and I had been thinking, oh, I want to get some feedback on this from an administrative business partner, because at Google, that's who plans these meetings and books the speakers and all that. And up walks a woman that I knew from California who was an administrative business partner, but I hadn't seen her in 5 years. And I hadn't seen her since we both lived in California and worked on the same team.
Whoa.
Turns out she is an administrative business partner again after doing a stint as an event planner for Google Events, booking these type of things. And she says, oh, actually, yeah, I'm happy to talk with you about this. Set up time with me. I got to run now because I'm actually running an offsite right now. And I'm like, okay. So she's like, write an elevator pitch, just a little blurb about it so I can think about it and shop it around. She introduces me to another administrative business partner who plans like high level meetings for executives. And she's like, that sounds interesting. Like, write me a one pager, right? And focus on why would a leader take time out of their very busy, important meeting to invest in this? And I was like, okay, cool. Let me do that. And I procrastinated on it because I make it into a bigger thing. It's one of my things. And I got to this week, I sat down and I'm like, I'm doing it. And I did it. And then I sent it to her, Jackie, who asked for it. And I also sent it to Ashley, the one I ran into in the cafeteria, just because she was part of this journey. And 5 minutes later, she writes me back and says, can I book you for this June 20th?
Whoa.
And I'm like, universe, there we go. And there was just so many things, like so many little things this week that were like on the right track. A friend, I mentioned I want to help people envision their post-FI life and start living that life now. A friend of mine who actually helped me get out of my own way to actually start this podcast when it was just an idea that I was overcomplicating. Rashawn, he texted me this week and it's like, hey, my friend is like looking to build more meaning into her life and wants to envision her future. You guys should talk. And I'm like,
whoa.
So funny. It's so many little things like that. So this is a long way of saying, yes, the more we relax, the easier things can flow and good things happen.
And one thing I wanted to mention about your story that came to mind while you were talking is we're talking about how many of us, we strive and we're focused on the goal and we're looking at our spreadsheets or whatever we're looking at. I think what happens and what you illustrated was we're so focused on what the steps we think we need to take that we are not opening our eyes and looking around at the pieces of the puzzle that are in front of our faces. You were physically looked around and saw this woman.
Yeah.
It's like everything we need to do what we are meant to do is here and available. I think a lot of times we just can't see it. And one of the reasons we can't or don't see it is because we are like eyes down, nose to the grindstone. And literally and metaphorically, our vision is focused just on that. And we're not seeing the other opportunities or the other pieces that are just right there for us to pick up. So that was something that came to mind for me as you shared that is like you literally saw her.
Yeah.
And that was what kicked this whole thing off. And if you'd been so focused on your notes or on your phone or your planning or whatever, you wouldn't have actually seen her and been able to move forward the way that you are, which, by the way, congratulations. It's exciting.
Thank you. Yeah. It's to what you were saying before, like creating space in your life. I don't know exactly how you were talking about it before. I think it was with regards to stuff or some sort of mental pattern. But the more that we can create space in our life, it's exactly what happened with your workshops or with your courses, right? You chose not to do them. You created space and new things came into your life and you were ready to meet them. And with envisioning, I'm all about having a clear vision, but then and practicing that vision. But you're right. You have to be open. You have to be open and aware and available to whatever is showing up. But without the vision, you won't be ready to see those things. But when you're too focused on a goal and forcing and making things happen, it's got to be this way, it's got to be now, then you miss those. So it's I think to find balance.
It's a paradox that you have to hold. And I think that's why it's tricky, why it's such a practice.
It's not so easy.
Yeah, you hold the vision. And then the other thing is the vision can change. And you have to be ready for that to happen because that happens too. I mean, I talked about going to Canada. Our original vision was moving our whole family overseas to Southeast Asia, doing like a geo arbitrage thing.
That's very different.
Very different. But that was the original vision several years ago that we concocted. And just as I became aware and I looked around, I was like, that's actually not the best thing for our family. It's not best, particularly for my one daughter. And then I was like, does that mean the vision dies? That goal's no good? And then it morphed into this Canadian adventure that might become something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think we have to have a vision and we have to hold it and be open to the vision shifting and changing because that's going to happen at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah.
As we start walking down the path, we learn new things.
Yeah.
We have different feelings about things and it shifts and changes. Very good. I'm loving this conversation. So
Me
thank
too.
you, Rose. This is fantastic. Let's shift gears now into what I call the Mindful Fire Final Four. You ready?
Hi. I'm ready.
All right. So the first question is, not surprisingly, about envisioning. And I like to ask people about something in their life, an example of a time where they had an idea or a vision and it seemed really out there and implausible. And somehow they made it happen. So I'd love to hear an example of something that you envisioned that came to be.
The best example would be my business. So when I was teaching, I started having this idea of helping people declutter their stuff. And I envisioned it actually as being a professional organizer in people's homes, helping them physically declutter and organize their spaces, which is what my business started out as. But I didn't know what I would call it. And so I remember like one night, the name of the business came to me, which is technically still the name of my business, but I don't use it anymore. But the name of my business came to me and I wanted to just call it Less. L-E-S, Less. And then the tagline came to me, Less clutter, more you. And I remember writing it in a composition notebook in scripty handwriting, the way you might have once written the name of like the person you had a crush on. And you would like write your name with their last name or something like that. And I did this. I would write this name and I was like, yes, that is it. And it was just this idea. I was still teaching middle school full time. I had no idea how to start a business. There was nobody entrepreneurial in my family. I had no idea how this was going to happen. But then through a series of things that actually seemed like bad things, where I applied for part-time at my school and they denied me and I was really mad about that. So then I quit and these different things. I ended up starting that business and I named it Less. And that was my original tagline, which I think is even still on some of my stuff. But yeah, so it started from a vision of actually like writing with my hand the vision of the name of this company and the tagline of this company in a composition notebook that actually eventually did become a company and is still technically, even though I don't use that name, still technically the company that I'm running today.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's like that. You had the idea and the vision and it came to you and then you have built on it, right?
Ah.
And it's morphed and changed and the vision has changed like we were just talking about. It's amazing. So the second question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone early on their path to financial independence?
So early on the path to financial independence, I would encourage people to get really clear on why you want to do this, which kind of relates to some of the things we talked about, because doing something like this is going to require you to probably change some things in your life and probably do things differently than a lot of people around you are doing them. And if you're not clear on why this even matters, you're not going to continue with it because it's going to seem too different, too weird, maybe too challenging. So my advice would be get clear on why. And especially if you are in a partnership, make sure you share that why with your partner and see what their why is. Because I started off my financial independence journey with Dave Ramsey. I was a Dave Ramsey baby. And I am one of these people, like I read a book, I read The Total Money Makeover, and I was like, we are doing this, Josh. And I didn't give him a choice. I didn't ask him if he was in on it. I didn't talk about why it mattered. I just showed him a page of notes I'd written from the book. I said, we're doing this. Okay, we're going to have a cash budget. There's going to be these envelopes. And every month we're going to sit down. We're going to go through all the receipts. And he was a very slow convert because of the way I approached him about it. Yeah. So get clear on your why and have conversations, if you have a partner, with your person on why this matters to you. I think a lot of times when I see people struggle with getting a partner on board is because they talk about the what, not the why. The what of getting out of debt and the what of going to financial independence involves budgeting. It involves tracking. It involves learning how to use an online investment tool or something like that. The what is not necessarily very sexy or fun. So if the why is not strong, nobody's getting on board with you. So I learned the hard way. Don't start with the what, start with the why. So even if you're by yourself, start with the why for yourself, because you're going to need to remind yourself of that when you're on that journey, because that's the only thing that really keeps you going.
Great advice on both fronts, the personal front and the partner front. All right. The third question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone getting started with meditation and or mindfulness?
It's okay to feel like you're doing it wrong. I still feel like I'm doing it wrong. And it's also okay if it doesn't look the way that other people make it look. I used to think meditation and mindfulness meant I had to be sitting on a cushion in a quiet room with some soft lighting, and it had to be 30 to 45 minutes or something. And so I never did it because that just seemed like something I was not going to do. I have 3 kids and a business, and I'm just not going to sit quietly for 30 minutes. As I learned more about it, I realized that it's all about being aware. And for me, honestly, I still don't do I definitely don't do long seated meditation. I'll do a little bit of seated meditation, but for me, my best meditation is something that involves movement of my body. So like even some slow yoga stretches, or definitely walking, like walking meditation, especially with my dog. I suit him up and we walk this neighborhood, and I have some of my greatest like insights. And sometimes I'll just weep. Actually, I hope most people in my neighborhood are not really watching me, but like looking at just trees and the sky, I have these really deep, meaningful moments that happen not every single time, for sure. Most of the time, not. But 5-ish, maybe % of the time or less, I will have these really like spiritual moments. And I'm walking outside, looking around. I don't have earbuds in or anything. It's like I'm in my neighborhood, not even a special nature place. So it's okay if it doesn't look like sitting down with your legs crossed, quietly humming or whatever. Meditation and mindfulness are really, it's like a way of being in the world, and you can do that anywhere, anytime. Driving can be a meditation. Sitting in a meeting with your colleagues can be a meditation or mindful moment. Washing the dishes after dinner is a meditative or mindful moment if you bring that state of being to it, which most of us don't do most of the time. But even if you do it a little bit of time, that I've found makes a big difference. And that kind of relieves me. I've always felt a little guilty that I'm not the person sitting down for 30 minutes every morning doing the meditation. I'm not. But I do feel like I practice mindfulness and I practice meditation, but it looks maybe different than what traditional meditation might look like.
Great advice across the board. Really appreciate that. And yeah, it came to mind what John Kabat-Zinn always says. He says, the meditation doesn't end when you get off the cushion, right? Life is the meditation and life is the curriculum. So yeah, you can find whatever works for you. And as listeners will know, I have plenty of guided meditations to get started with on the podcast here. So wherever you're listening to this, you can check those out. All right, Rose, the last question is, how can people connect with you online, learn more about your work and what you're up to?
Yeah, so the best way to connect online would be to go to my website. It's roselounsbury.com, and Lounsbury is spelled Lounsbury. So it's like a dog buries a bone, not a strawberry. So there you can find my blog. You can sign up for my emails. If you are looking to get started on a simplicity journey, I do have a free 30-day simplicity challenge, which is an email challenge. And so every day for 30 days, you'll get a short and sweet email from me. And each email gives you one small tip, either how to declutter your home, how to simplify your work life, or how to clear your mind. So those are the 3 areas that I focus on with people. So you can get that by going to 30daysimplicitychallenge.com. And that's a numeric 30. So that'd be a great way to get started and start clearing some space in your home and your work and also in your mind. And that would be probably some of the best ways to connect.
Wonderful. And so I'll link both of those up in the show notes, and I'm going to sign up for that 30-day challenge. That sounds fantastic.
A little word of warning. If you do sign up, a large part of my audience is female. So some of the things in the challenge might talk about like decluttering bras and underwear, but realize like you can edit that to whatever your version of that would be. So I have a very
minimalist bra collection. So I can say that. Don't have a problem there. So I'll check that one off. I'll get my gold star.
Already done.
Nice. Well, thank you, Rose. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom with the audience. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure the audience did as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me on today's episode of the Mindful Fire podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I invite you to hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this. This just lets the platforms know you're getting value from the episodes and you want to be here when I release additional content. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time on the Mindful Fire podcast.